No tax. No taxation without representation. Right. Yes, ma'am.
Citizens of the 13 colonies here in America, greetings. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts, with the Committee of Correspondence. I'm here for the cause of independence and this war that we are currently fighting with the late mother country of England. Many people are still remaining loyal to the British Crown, but I am here to remind you why we are currently breaking away from this unnatural relationship. As you remember, King George came to the throne in the year 1760 during the French and Indian War. He had a new agenda, and his agenda was to appoint new prime ministers wanting to tax the colonies. A new prime minister came in England there, and he made his proclamation of 1763 stating that he would be canceling all previous land grants given to colonies by past kings and parliaments west of the Appalachian Mountains. In the year 1765, I'm sure many of you remember this, the Stamp Act passed Parliament, requiring all colonists to purchase stamps from government agencies for all legal documents, wills, bills of sale, licenses, pamphlets, newspapers, and notes. Great uneasiness arose in the colonies because there was no proper representation in Parliament, breaking English law. In the year 1766, the Stamp Act was then repealed, but on the same day, the Declaratory Act was passed by Parliament, saying that our colonies are subordinate to England, and that Parliament had the power to pass laws to bind the colonies in all cases whatsoever. Pretty soon, many of the colonies refused to pay this tax. Charles Townshend, the new Prime Minister of England, considered it a rebellion, and then he suspended many of the colonial legislatures in Massachusetts, New York, and Virginia. He then levied a more heavy tax on us, calling the Townshend Acts, on our colonial imports from Britain, being paper, paint, lead, glass, and tea. Britain also established a board of customs to see that the taxes were collected in Boston and created special courts to try custom violators without jury, yet again breaking English law. Would it not make sense to you, being underneath the same crown of England, that we should have the same rights as they do as Englishmen? Should we not? But let me tell you, no, we do not have those same rights. And let me say this, no taxation without representation, for they are repeatedly breaking English law. Pretty soon, pamphlets and letters circulated in opposition to the Townshend Acts. Boycotts refusing to buy British goods soon followed, and violence broke out in many of the towns. As a result, British troops were sent to Boston, my home, where violence was the worst on October 1st of 1768. I remember when these troops came into our town. They're playing fife and drum as they marched into our town streets, as if they had won a victory. We knew at this point things would only get worse. But now we realized why there was 10,000 British troops who remained here in the colonies after the French and Indian War that ended in the year 1763. And these British troops were not stationed on the western frontier, on the west side of the Appalachian Mountains, where there were still small threats of French and Indians. No, they're stationed along the seaboard on the Atlantic side in our towns, which caused us an alarm, for there were not where the possibilities of French and Indian were. So why were they here? Now we realize that they are here to bring us into subjection of the king. And we knew that it would continually get worse, especially this day, March the 5th of 1770. That was a couple of years ago. In Boston, I was going about my own business, and I saw some schoolboys, rather young, throwing snowballs at a British sentry who was at a customs station. Well, this British sentry then called for assistance from the British troops. They soon gathered, and many Bostonians gathered around to see this drama play out. Well, many of them started to harass the British troops. The British troops were then given the official order to fire into the crowd of civilians, killing 5. For we known or nicknamed this event the Boston Massacre. Now, later in the same year, 1770, the Townshend Act was repealed, except the tax on tea. Peace resumed temporarily, but Samuel Adams, a Patriot leader, warned us that this is not the end. The real issue has not been solved. He then placed pamphlets in newspapers to go throughout the colonies, warning colonies of this. And then he suggested that a committee of correspondence be formed in the year 1772. This committee would have the duty to inform the local towns and colonies of the ongoing problems with England. And pretty soon, many of the other colonies started to form their own committees of correspondence. But not only was it to inform our towns, but the world, in our perspective, what was happening with Britain. Now, in Boston, in 1773, there's a ship full of tea that had an extremely high tax on it. Do you know what this tax was? 30 to 60% tax on tea. You, sir, would you like to pay a 30 to 60% tax on your tea that you are not properly represented for in Parliament, and now it passed, and now you have to pay it?
No.
Would you like to? No. Didn't think so, thank you. So men and I, all around the same age, on the night of December the 16th of 1773, we dressed as Mohawk Indians. We boarded that ship, broke open the chest of tea. We helped the crew, for nobody was injured. We just wanted to make our point clear. We are not going to pay this tax on this tea, because we previously asked the Royal Governor, Thomas Hutchinson, to send this ship of tea back to England, where it came from. But he denied it and wanted us to pay this tax. So we broke open the chest of tea, dumped the contents into the harbor, which was about 340 cases of tea. There is so much tea in the harbor that the harbor turned brown. We then swapped the deck, made the ship all nice and tidy, and we made our point. And as we were leaving, we said, "Rally, Mohawks, bring out your axes. Tell King George we'll pay no taxes." Of course, the British were outraged by this. Pretty soon, the Royal Governor, Thomas Hutchinson, was then replaced by the British General Thomas Gage. And now the colony of Massachusetts fell underneath martial law came upon us, for we lost every traditional right as Englishmen. After this, the Coercive Acts came upon us. Under the Coercive Acts, there was a new Quartering Act, making it legal for British officials to quarter troops in occupied buildings, our homes. And let me tell you, these British troops are not moral and pure men. No, they're vile and criminals, for they often violated many of our women's chastity. As things worsened, we nicknamed these acts the Intolerable Acts. Let me tell you, the next thing that happened underneath the same Coercive Acts, the Boston Port Bill came into the effect, closing the entire port of Boston to all types of commerce and trade. For this greatly affected our economic growth in this town, for we highly depended on this trade at sea, commerce. But with this taking into effect, I saw something that I never saw before. Such a unity between many of the colonies. For we had wagon trains of supplies coming as far away as South Carolina, bringing us livestock, food, and other supplies and clothes. for there is a unity growing, getting us prepared for what I believe this revolutionary war, this war for independence. Now, as you might have heard on the day of April 19th of 1775, last year, some men and I gathered on Lexington Green, knowing that the British were coming to Lexington to capture the Patriot leaders of Samuel Adams and John Hancock. But after that, they were planning to make their way further westward to take away our arms and munitions stored in Concord. So we took a stand there on Lexington Green that morning. It was a rather bright, sunny spring day. The commander of the militia, my commander, John Parker, told us to stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have war, let it begin here. The British officer with several hundred troops behind him, but there was only 70 in our number. He came rather gallant and elegant on his horse, riding up to us, saying, "To lay down your arms, ye villains, disperse, why stand ye here?" We stood our ground. After we felt that we made our point, some of us turned our backs and started to make our way home. All of a sudden, a shot rang out, which nobody knows, but it caused the British troops to fire upon us without giving official order, shooting many of our men in the backs, injuring 10 and killing 8 of us. We fired just here and there, but later on we regrouped. After we saw these billows of smoke coming up from Concord, we thought they were burning our homes, but no, they were burning our stored munitions. But we met them at the North Bridge in Concord, where both sides were given the official order to fire upon each other. The British started to retreat, a long 17 miles back to Boston, and bloody, as I might add, for we followed them back. We hid behind trees and fences and our homes, firing at them, plucking them off one by one. We lost a good bit of men that day, but the British lost even more. So now we have them bottled up in Boston. More has happened since then. This past June the 7th of 1776, Richard Henry Lee in Continental Congress presented a resolution stating, resolved, that the United Colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is and ought to be totally dissolved. I have heard that Continental Congress has appointed a special committee to take up this resolve. I believe they are going to put together an official document stating our rights, a list of grievances, and our absolute independence in breaking away from everything political and every tie with Britain. Let me tell you now, General George Washington is in need of troops for the Continental Army. Not only him, but our local militia forces. You, sir, sitting down, would you be willing to join today your local militia in arms to fight for independence for your nation?
I'm more of a letter writer, but yeah.
We need you. Thank you. You, sir, would you be willing to fight for these colonies? Yes, sir? Thank you. Because let me remind you this. For we are not fighting for ourselves. We are fighting for these rights that we believe in. But we are fighting for that younger generation so they may enjoy what we are securing now. A government where we can be properly represented, upholding the truth, good values, and good government as a whole, and suppressing evil and punishing it. So, my fellow countrymen, patriotism is the love of one's own country. Are you ready to display it? Thank you.